Chapter 2, entitled Build a Better World. Arriving at the country estate of her family, Maria does not burst onto the scene with giddy happiness. The years of family illness, Russian brutality, and financial insecurity have taken their toll. Maria retreats to the guest room with the company of her books. As the days turn to weeks, Maria gradually puts aside her scholastic seclusion for long walks, playing tag with the other children, sketching in her journal, rolling hoops, riding horses, and fishing. She is reaching toward experiencing a new side of life. Being 15, Maria is a delightful mix of one moment being a young woman and the next moment a giggling girl. She writes in her journal, "Sometimes I laugh all by myself, and I contemplate my state of total stupidity with genuine satisfaction." Attending late-night parties turns the early hours of studying into lazy days of sleeping late. In a letter to Kasia, Maria writes, "I can't believe geometry or algebra ever existed. I have completely forgotten them." One morning, Maria is returning from a night of music and parties. Her feet are tired, and she's carrying her red shoes. Before retiring to bed, she finds the trash basket, and there is a clunk as Maria tosses in her shoes. She has worn them out dancing. Later on, Maria writes in her journal, she says, "All I can say is that maybe never again, never in my whole life, will I have such fun." After a few months, Maria visits another family estate in the foothills of the Carpathian Mountains. Here is an aunt who has broken from all constraints and makes it known she doesn't like childcare or cooking. Along with these flaunts, she smokes cigarettes. This aunt starts a lace-making school and furniture factory. Maria is absorbing this example of independence along with the continual revelry of being a teenager. Free to dress in traditional Polish costumes and dance their national dances, Maria writes, "We could speak Polish in all freedom and sing songs without going to prison." One of the guests, Joseph Bokuski, is Maria's cousin. Joseph studies chemistry and will be a student of the famous Russian chemist Dmitry Mendeleev. Providing another stunning example of male support, Joseph encourages Maria to study chemistry. She will be meeting him again in a few years, and he will play a key role in Maria's choice to devote her life to research. As an aside about Dmitry Mendeleev, he is the one that created the periodic table in 1865, although not accepted by the Chemistry Society for another 22 years. Mendeleev recognized the pattern for laying out the sequence of elements. This pattern showed the gaps of elements yet to be discovered. Two of these gaps will be filled later by Maria. Back to the text. Another guest at the family estate is the famous actor Joseph Kordobinsky. He entertains the girls and guests with songs, poems, and playing jokes. When Maria and her cousins learn that he is leaving, they make a wreath of flowers and toss it to him as his carriage goes by on the driveway. To their delight, he catches the wreath and puts it on his head as he rides away. When the year comes to a close for Maria, there is one more short chapter of gaiety. An invitation has come from a former student of Maria's mother. The Countess de Fleury invites Maria and her sister Helena to spend the rest of the summer at the Countess's home. The girls are delighted when their train is met by a 4-horse carriage and uniformed coachmen. The Countess arranges 3 balls, 2 garden parties, and several boating trips for the girls. In between events, there is hiking, swimming, rowing, or playing silly pranks on other guests. Helena writes of this time at the estate, "The summer passed quickly as a dream, but the memory of it has been lasting. How many times did Manya and I talk about Kepa, and every time we would smile and even shed a tear of nostalgia. It is good when a person has had at least one such crazy summer in her life." Maria's spirit is revived, and she is having a renewed dedication to the ideals of positivism. It's the fall of 1884. Maria, 16 years old, is back in Warsaw with her father. After 10 years, he is no longer taking any boarders, although the financial consequences is a smaller apartment. Maria's brother Joseph is in a medical school at the reopened Warsaw University. However, the doors are only open for men. For women to continue their education, they must incur additional expenses of having to go abroad. Bronya and Maria are considering Paris. First, they must raise the money. To give women the preparation they need for university studies, Polish activists in Warsaw start an academy of higher education for women. The immediate response is enrollment of over 200 female students. There is also an immediate retort from the Russians. Any teachers caught giving lessons for the academy are sent into exile. Undeterred, the school goes into stealth mode, and more instructors step up to teach. Meeting in various clandestine places, it becomes known as the Flying University. Enrollment reaches over 1,000 women. Maria and Bronya will be two of them. At these meetings, not only is the lesson covered, but information and pamphlets are passed out supporting Polish nationalism. If caught, students and teachers are sent to prison. This resistance is the turn of tactics away from direct revolts and away from those who believe their Catholic Church will save them. Maria is joining this wave of the intelligentsia. Attempting to make her ideals a reality, Maria is tutoring children. She writes, "You cannot hope to build a better world without improving the individuals. To that end, each of us must work for his own improvement and at the same time share a general responsibility for all humanity, our particular duty being to aid those to whom we think we can be most useful." End quote. To this end, Maria has an advertisement in the newspaper, and it reads, "Lessons in arithmetic, geometry, and French available from young woman with degree, moderate prices." Maria's schedule is living up to her quote. She is either studying for her classes at the Flying U or tutoring children. Maria and Bronya want to be something. Bronya has her sights set on being a physician, and Maria decides she wants to be a scientist. Both sisters hope to raise enough money to continue their education by tutoring children. Maria walks through Warsaw to the homes of her students, trying to teach kids who don't care and parents who are condescending and won't pay is a challenge for her youthful convictions and her income. Maria's next step is applying for a post as a governess. September of 1885, Maria becomes the governess for a well-to-do family. Maria refers to them as the bees. She believes the children will be pleasant and motivated to learn. Reality check. Maria writes to her cousin, "I shouldn't like my worst enemy to live in such a hell. My relations with the wife had become so icy that I could not endure it any longer, and I told her so. Since she was exactly as enthusiastic about me as I was about her, we understood each other marvelously well. It was one of those rich houses where they speak French when there is company, a chimney sweep's kind of French, where they don't pay their bills for 6 months and fling money out the window even though they economize pettily on oil for their lamps. They have 5 servants. They pose as liberals, and in reality they are sunk in the darkest stupidity, And although they speak in most sugary tones, slander and scandal rage through their talks, slander which leaves not a rag on anybody. I learned to know the human race a little better by being there. I learned that the characters described in novels really do exist, and that one must not enter into contract with people who have been demoralized by wealth." End quote. After this dreadful experience, the plan Maria contrives to help Bronya is even more remarkable. Bronya and Maria are separately saving money in order to go to a university. The frustration is this plan is taking forever. Maria suggests they pool their money and Bronya go to school first, while Maria stays behind to work and send support. Once Bronya has her degree and a job, then Bronya can support Maria to attend school. Maria's promise to Bronya is a 5-year commitment. Having worked with the bees, Maria knows she could be positioning herself to live her own words, "I shouldn't like my worst enemy to live in such a hell." Bronya refuses the offer and argues there is no reason she should go before Maria. Maria insists and explains why Bronya should go first and says, "Because I am 17 and you are going to be 20. Within the week, Maria has accepted a position to work for the Zorowski family, hours north of Warsaw, miles from her beloved family. It will be years until she is free of her contract. January 1st, 1886. Maria is off to the country again, except this time it is not to stay in the cocoon of a loving family. Maria remembers and writes, "That going away remains one of the most vivid memories of my youth. My heart was heavy as I climbed into the railway car. It was to carry me several hours away from those I loved, and after the railway journey, I must drive horse and sleigh for 5 hours longer. What experience was awaiting me? So I questioned as I sat close to the car window looking out across wide plains. Once I arrived to my destination, if I wanted to turn and run away, how could I ever be able to retrace the last 5-hour stretch and regain the railway?" Maria arrives at the home of the Zorowski family. The estate includes 40 horses, 60 cows, a flock of servants, and the family income is from a refinery where sugar is extracted from crops of sugar beets. The lady of the house, Madame Zorowski, is kind. After a hot cup of tea, Maria is shown a large bedroom, which she will have all to herself. Maria begins to think this governess position just might work out. The Zorowskis, Maria refers to them in correspondence as the Z's, includes Mr. Z, as Maria describes, being old-fashioned but full of good sense, likable, and reasonable. The wife, Madame Z, had been a former governess and obviously had married well. Maria describes her, "When you know how to deal with her, she is nice. I think she likes me well enough." They have They have a daughter who is 19, 1 year older than Maria, and 3 younger children under 10. The younger children are spoiled, and Maria is expected to somehow make them mind. Of the 3 sons who are away, 2 are in boarding school. The eldest, Casimir, is studying mathematics at Warsaw University. Maria is finding her balance in the role of governess. It is a position of straddling the fence. Maria does not belong in the realm of the family nor the servants. She writes, "In a general way, I observe in my talk the decorum suitable to my position." When she is not busy with governess duties, she uses her free time to study. Maria writes to tell her father that she is studying physics, sociology in French, and anatomy and physiology in Russian. Her father sends math problems for her to solve. With no teacher to influence her, Maria relies on her capacity to think outside the box. These years of studying alone are the foundation to her future years of independent research. And Maria writes, At 9 in the evening, I take my books and go to work. If something unexpected does not prevent it, I have even acquired the habit of getting up at 6 so that I work more. When I feel myself quite unable to read with profit, I work problems of algebra or trigonometry, which allow no lapse of attention and get me back into the right road. Maria continues to revel in being outdoors and spends time with the children making snow houses and ice skating. She enjoys learning details about the farm from Mr. Z. Maria writes to her cousin, "If you could only see how exemplary my behavior is. I go to church every Sunday and every holy day without ever claiming I have a headache or a cold in order to stay home. I almost never talk about higher education for women. In general, I maintain a discretion in my speech that is suitable to my position." Considering her years of training to uphold an outward appearance for the Russians, she plays the role expected of her as the family governess. And as an aside, I have a 170-pound dog that's always with me when I'm upstairs working. And if you hear someone snoring in the background, that's my dog. Back to the text. The Z's enjoy the compliant Maria, and during the honeymoon stage, she is treated as a surrogate daughter. The Z's include Maria in their outings to parties and social events. For Maria, she is not flattered with the attention, and she is unable to keep up with the standard of dress. More importantly, the additional social schedule is interfering with her study schedule. And Maria writes, "They were already speaking of me unfavorably because, as I didn't know anybody, I refused to go to the ball." The prior frivolities Maria enjoyed when she was 15, she has outgrown. Maria writes, "Whereas the young people of this area are not really at all interesting, the girls are geese who don't open their mouth except to be as provocative as possible. They all dance perfectly. They're actually not bad. Some of them are even intelligent, but their education has not developed their minds. And the festivals around here, which are insane and incessant, have ended up making them scatterbrained. As for the young men, almost none of them are very nice or in the least intelligent." End quote. Maria never will be one to relish small talk and meeting superficial people. She concludes, "The Zwarowski family is very cultivated by comparison." One area in which the Z's prove cultivated will be giving Maria permission to teach the illiterate peasant children how to read and write Polish. Under the Russians, the village children are taught only in the Russian language. Since the peasants and their children don't know Russian, the policy result is a near 100% illiteracy in the rural areas. This ignorance of the masses is to the Russian advantage, and it is considered a crime to teach the peasants in Polish. If caught or exposed by one of the children or parents, the punishment is prison or exile to Siberia. When Maria asks the Z's for their permission, she reminds them, "Think it over carefully. You know that if we are denounced, we shall be sent to Siberia." Bronka, the daughter, agrees to help. What starts as 10 students turns to 18. A 2-hour class sometimes lasts 5 hours. The children's parents stay to listen. Maria's vision of living the positivist philosophy is being played out. Aside from giving classes, Maria risks being caught when she creates a library for the employees at a garment shop. Helping to educate the adults is a tiny version of the Flying University, and Maria remembers, quote, "The means by which we took action were paltry, and the results could not be very great. However, I still believe that the ideas that guided us then are the only ideas that can bring about real social progress. We can't hope to build a better world without improving individual people." Maria writes to her cousin, "Great joys and great consolations come to me from these little children." Maria believes that there are intellectual gifts and potential among all the classes of people. Inside any peasant could be a writer, a painter, a musician, or a scientist who has not had the opportunity to be educated. In the meantime, Maria contends with her young charges who are not so happy with their opportunity to be educated. She writes to a friend in the spring that first year, saying, "Today we had another scene because the younger daughter did not want to get up at the usual hour. In the end, I was obliged to take her calmly by the hand and pull her out of bed. I was boiling inside. You can't imagine what such things do to me. Such a piece of nonsense can make me ill for several hours, but I had to get the better of her." In December, Casimir, the oldest son, is home for the holidays. Meeting Maria, who can hold a conversation with him about mathematics, speaks, reads, writes in 3 languages, loves nature, and plays no games of coterie, he is entranced. Casimir and Maria fall in love. When he comes home for the summer holidays, the two go on walks and horseback rides. They make plans to marry. Several factors play into the young couple's belief that Casimir's parents will approve. Up to now, everyone has been fond of Maria. Mr. Z has gone for walks with her, explaining the farm and manufacturing. Madame Z had been a governess herself, and she had been very mothering to Maria, giving her birthday gifts and flowers. The Z's know Maria's family name is well respected in Warsaw. Maria's father, brother, and sisters have met the Z's when they came to visit Maria. Casimir tells his parents of his plans to marry Maria. The Z's promptly reply, no. They remind Casimir that Maria is a mere governess and the sons from well-to-do families don't marry the help. The Z's point out there will be other women who are available and they will have dowries. The two add that the additional justification that Casimir will also lose his social status. And if all of this isn't enough, the final threat is they will disinherit him. So apparently Madame Z has conveniently forgotten that she also was once a governess. The Z's tell their son he will never marry someone who works in, quote, other people's houses. Casimir returns to the university having conceded to his parents. Maria, on the other hand, must stay at the house to fulfill her contract. Every day she spends time with people who don't think she is good enough for their son. Maria must hide her hurt and keep up appearances with the Z's. She also needs to reassure her father. Maria is careful to never add to the burden of guilt Vladislav still carries, having lost the money meant for education. Maria writes to him and says, "Above all and beyond all, my beloved father must stop despairing about not being able to help us. It is inconceivable that my father could do more for us than he has done. We have a good education, a solid cultural background, character, which is hardly the worse. Therefore, my father shouldn't be discouraged. We'll make out all right, without doubt. As for me, I will be eternally grateful to my dear father for what he has done for me, because he has done so much." Nor does Maria want to distract Bronya, who is studying at the Sorbonne. Only to her brother Joseph, Maria writes letters and shows signs of despair and wanting to escape. Although none of her letters refer directly to her break with Casimir, she does write, For now that I have lost the hope of ever becoming anybody, all my ambition has been transferred to Bronya and you. You two at least must direct your lives according to your gifts. These gifts, which without any doubt do exist in our family, must not disappear. The more regret I have for myself, the more hope I have for you. Casimir is home again for Christmas. He tries again to reason with his parents. They repeat, no. During this time, Maria writes to Joseph about her sister Helena enduring similar circumstances. And she writes, I can imagine how Hella's self-respect must have suffered. Truly, it gives one a good opinion of men. If they don't want to marry poor young girls, let them go to the devil. Nobody is asking them for anything, but why do they offend by troubling the peace of an innocent creature? Even if I keep a sort of hope that I shall not disappear completely into nothingness. And later in the letter she adds, I have fallen into black melancholy. Maria's vibrant energy is fading away. Another year passes and her turmoil goes deeper when she must see Casimir home again for the holidays. Maria is forlorn when writing to her cousin, I will get along as best I can, and when I can do no more, will say farewell to this base world. Some pretend that I am obliged to pass through this kind of fever called love. This absolutely does not enter into my plans. If I ever had any others, they have gone up in smoke, have buried them, locked them up, sealed, and forgotten them. Maria's writing might seem melodramatic, except when one considers the tragedies in her still young life. Remembering she has endured situations of injustice beyond her control, Maria's reaction to get along as best I can, and her perspective of this base world, it has merit. One of the journal entries that she has of that time, she says, oh, to get away for a few days from this chilling atmosphere, from those criticisms, from the perpetual watch I have to keep over my own words, the expression on my face, my actions. I need this change as much as a cool bath on a hot day. Back to the text. The calendar is pronouncing spring. What should be the season of hope for Maria is only more struggling. She writes her friend, if you only knew how I sigh and long to go to Warsaw for only a few days, to say nothing of my clothes which are worn out and need care, but my soul too is worn out. The years of supporting Bronya have taken their toll, and she writes even more, I have literally not a ruble, not one. Maria doesn't even have money for a stamp. Of the many lessons Maria will carry into her future, she remembers this decision during her governess years. Quote, I was as much interested in literature and sociology as in science. However, during those years of isolated work, trying little by little to find my real preferences, I finally turned toward mathematics and physics, and resolutely undertook a serious preparation for future work. End quote. Hours of studying in books doesn't substitute for the practical work Maria needs to be learning in a laboratory. Like a pianist trying to progress with no keyboard, Maria writes to Joseph, what can I do as I have no place to make experiments or to do practical work? And Maria still has one more year to stay. In the fall, a letter from Kasia announces her engagement, and Maria responds, you tell me you have just lived through the happiest week of your life, and I, during these holidays, have been through such weeks as you will never know. The thing that softens the memory of them is that I have come through with my head high. I often hide my deep lack of gaiety under laughter. Sometimes I learned to do something I learned to do when I found out that creatures who feel so keenly as I do and are unable to change this characteristic of their nature have to dissimulate it at least as much as possible. It is a sign of solid friendship that Maria can be honest with Kasia and not have to put up a front with her. We also see Maria's internal resolve to come through with my head high, and her self-control to feign as much as possible in order to bide her time. Maria ends the letter with this, nevertheless, I shall be as gay and free as ever when I come to you. Will your mother give us lemonade and chocolate ices as she used to do? During her final winter with disease, Maria writes to another friend, quote, "While you are living at the center of the movement, my existence strangely resembles that of one of those slugs which haunt the dirty water of our river. Luckily, I hope to get out of this lethargy soon. I have changed a great deal, physically and spiritually, during my stay at the Sikuski place. This is not surprising. I was barely 18 when I came here, and what I have not been through. There have been moments in which I shall certainly count among the most cruel of my life. I feel everything very violently, with a physical violence, and then I give myself a shaking the vigor of my nature conquers, and it seems to me that I am coming out of a nightmare. First principle: never to let one's self be beaten down by persons or by events. I count the hours and days that separate me from the holidays and my departure to my own people. There is also the need of new impressions, of change, of movement in life, which seizes me sometimes with such force that I want to fling myself into the greatest of follies, if only to keep my life from being eternally the same. Fortunately, I have so much work to do that these attacks seize me pretty rarely. It is my last year here, and I must therefore work all the harder so that the children's examinations will go well." Seeing the end in sight, Maria writes to Kasia, "My head is so full of plans that it seems aflame." During this final year, Maria's father is appointed director of a reform school outside Warsaw. Working in a school for young criminals is a difficult job, but it pays well, and he can give this money to help Bronya and Maria. Bronya writes to tell Maria to stop sending money and save it for her own trip. Bronya next writes to her father, telling him to stop sending her the monthly allowance and instead give it to Maria. The mutual support of the family never wavers. In the spring of 1889, Maria is leaving the Z's and returns to Warsaw and takes another governess position to continue to raise money for her own education. By July 14th, she is working at the home of a wealthy family in Warsaw, Monsieur and Madame Fuchs. She goes with the family to a summer resort. The F's enjoy Maria and make a pleasant year for her. Maria does not have to tolerate disdain or the prior awkwardness during any holiday visits of Casimir. When the F's return to their estate in Warsaw, they ask Maria to attend all of their social events and parties. When Madame F hosts a salon, she asks Maria to join and introduces Maria as, quote, the exquisite Mademoiselle Sklodowska. During this year, Maria is attending the Flying University, where classes have outgrown the living room of instructors. A Danish visitor to Poland writes of the students, quote, "They are women who, even in narrow and straitened circumstances, preserve the grand self-esteem which runs in their blood." Maria illustrates his observation. One of the secret places for the Flying U to meet is the Museum of Industry and Agriculture. The science laboratory is run by Maria's cousin Joseph Bokuski, who had encouraged her years ago. This is Maria's first opportunity to work in a laboratory, and she describes the frustrations of adapting to this new setting. Maria writes, "At times, I would be in the deepest despair because of accidents and failures resulting from my inexperience. But on the whole, this first trial confirmed in me the taste for experimental research in the fields of physics and chemistry. It was my great joy to be able, for the first time in my life, to find access to a laboratory." Maria is in love with research. Maria is staying the year in Warsaw to study, spend time with her father, and save enough money to continue her formal education. It would seem obvious the next step is to follow her sister to the Sorbonne in Paris, and yet her way is not yet clear. In March, Bronya is finishing her exams. She writes to Maria about her plans to be married. Bronya adds, quote, "And now you, my little Manya, you must make something of your life sometime. If you can get together a few hundred rubles this year, you can come to Paris next year and live with us, where you will find board and lodging." The expected response is an immediate yes, but the last 7 years have taken a toll on Bronya's little Manya. Maria writes back, quote, "Dear Bronya, I have been stupid, I am stupid, and I shall remain stupid all the days of my life, or rather, to translate into the current style, I have never been, am not now, and shall never be lucky. I dreamed of Paris as a redemption, but the hope of going there left me a long time ago, and now that the possibility is offered to me, I do not know what to do. I'm afraid to speak of it to Father. I believe our plan of living together next year is close to his heart, and he clings to it. I want to give him the little happiness in his old age, and on the other hand, my heart breaks when I think of ruining my abilities, which must have been worth something." Maria is settling for the role of supporting others rather than risk reaching for her own dreams. Continuing in the letter to Bronya, Maria writes, "There is also the fact that I promised Hella to find her a post in Warsaw, and I feel it is my duty to watch over her." She also asks Bronya with help for a loan for Joseph to study in Warsaw, and then writes, "With this help, Joseph can become useful to society, whereas if he leaves for the provinces, he is lost. I bore you with Hella, Joseph, and Father, and with my own wretched future. My heart is so black, so sad, that I feel how wrong I am to speak of all this to you and to poison your happiness, for you are the only one of us who has had what they call luck. Forgive me, but you see, so many things hurt me that it is hard for me to finish this letter gaily. I embrace you tenderly. The next time I shall write more cheerfully and at greater length, but today I am exceptionally unhappy in this world. Think of me with tenderness. Perhaps I shall be able to feel it even here." The doubts and conflicts are deeper than the future of her career. Maria is still hoping to marry Casimir Zorowski, and they are making plans to meet. That summer, Maria tells her father she is going to a resort in the Carpathian Mountains. Father writes to Bronya, "Maria has a secret about her future of which she is to speak to me at length. To tell you the truth, I can well imagine what it has to do with, and I don't myself know whether I should be glad or sorry. If my foresight is accurate, the same disappointments, coming from the same persons who have already caused them to her, are awaiting Manya. And yet, if it is a question of building a life according to her own feeling and of making two people happy, that is worth the trouble of facing them." This gracious letter giving his daughter leeway to find her own course, difficult for a parent in any generation, let alone the social norms of the late 1800s. He worries only that his daughter will be hurt. And when Vladislav writes in the letter about Maria's possible choice to go to Paris, his grace continues when he says, "It would be very painful for me to separate from her, but this consideration is obviously secondary." During Maria's visit to the Carpathians, Casimir perseveres with his same explanation that his parents won't change their opinion, and he can't see how to go against them. It begs the question, if nothing has changed, why does Casimir want to meet Maria? Does he have an option, a request for her to be his mistress? That is not unusual, and all the more reason Maria's father could have reason to worry that his Manya will make a regretted decision. Maria makes her decision. She has had enough. This back and forth has been going on for almost 4 years. Maria tells Casimir, quote, "If you can't see a way to clear up our situation, it is not for me to teach it to you." End quote. There is no record that Maria ever sees Casimir again. As an aside, Casimir Zawadzki continues his studies in mathematics and becomes a full professor at the University of Warsaw. He marries a well-known pianist, and they have 3 children. Urban legend of Warsaw has it that Warsaw citizens still remember that as an old man, a professor of mathematics at Warsaw University, that he used to sit quietly and contemplatively in front of one of the statues of Maria Sklodowska. Back to the text. Maria has straightened out her own situation and is ready to move forward. Within days, Maria writes to her sister, "Now, Bronya, I ask you for a definite answer. Decide if you can really take me in at your house, for I can come now. I have enough to pay all my expenses. If, therefore, without depriving yourself of a great deal, you could give me my food, write to me and say so. It would be a great happiness, as that would restore me spiritually after this cruel trial I have been through this summer, which will have influence on my whole life. But on the other hand, I do not wish to impose myself on you." It's been 8 years, and Maria is ready to launch. Bronya responds immediately, "Come." As Maria says her goodbyes, she goes to visit her former headmistress, Jadwiga Sikorska, who is using her home for the Flying University classes. As Maria's former teacher, she feels the joy, pride, and sense of fulfillment to know that her little Manya is on her way to the Sorbonne. The hardest goodbye is to her father, and she promises, "I shall not be away long, 2 years, 3 years at the longest." And that ends chapter 2. Thank you.